Meantime, a Metro Detroit native who played a critical role in the vaccine development finally got his first shot, but his work is far from over.
7 investigator Heather Catallo has more on the scientist whose work helped change the course of the pandemic.
Last spring, I introduced you to Jason McClellan. He's a Wayne State grad and a St. Clair Shores native whose lab first mapped the coronavirus spike protein. And it was his work that helped the pharmaceutical companies rise to the vaccine challenge. Jason McClellan has turned into something of a pandemic rock star.
People even came up to ask for selfies, which was kind of surreal.
McClellan is an associate professor of molecular biosciences at the University of Texas at Austin, where his lab has been studying the spike proteins in coronaviruses.
So your work essentially launched the vaccines, right?
Yeah, in part.
The St. Clair Shores native is modest, but this Wayne State grad's lab was the first to map the COVID-19 spike protein. That helped lay the groundwork for the vaccines. And now, a year after we first shared his story, McClellan finally got his first shot last week.
My wife, parents, and sister had all been vaccinated. Been waiting, hoping to get the vaccine at some point, but knowing it's important to wait my turn.
When the pandemic started, experts warned it could take years before a vaccine was available. The fastest at the time had been a vaccine for the mumps in the 1960s. That took 4 years. But thanks to the research from McClellan's lab, within 90 days of mapping the spike proteins, the clinical trials started. And now, a year later, shots are getting into arms all over the world.
We and others had already done a lot of that work years prior on different coronaviruses.
Following the deadly MERS outbreak in 2013, McClellan and his team began looking into the structure and function of spike proteins.
So that way we can be ready for the next outbreak 10 years later.
It ended up being less than 10 years, and when the pandemic hit the U.S. last spring, researchers were ready.
And in 2016, we came up with some modifications that you can make to spike proteins to help make them better vaccines.
While he is relieved to finally get the vaccine, McClellan's coronavirus work is far from over.
It's unlikely we'll be able to eliminate it.
With the virus and strains like it here for the long run, McClellan and his team are now working on a universal coronavirus vaccine, one that can protect us from COVID-19 variants, but also MERS and other bat coronaviruses that have yet to jump into humans.
That way we already have vaccines on hand in case there's another coronavirus outbreak in the future.
Jason McClellan says this past year has been a powerful example of why it's so important to keep funding research at the federal level, especially the National Institutes of Health. He says if the research is already in place, we can respond to the next pandemic that much faster. In St. Clair Shores, I'm Heather Catallo, 7 Action News.
Heather, thank you.